Howdy, New Englanders. I love it. No, we were not going to cancel, and we're so excited that you all came here. So this is Heat Pump 101 and educational session. So how many people know or have a heat pump? We've got a couple already here. Great. So you can share your experience with the group. My name is Sharon Brownfield, and I'm co-founder of the group called Sustainable Stow with Arnie Epstein right here. And we are very excited to begin the process of talking about heat pumps and talking about the program that we've just gotten involved in. So first of all, why are we choosing heat pumps? Why do we even choose to do it? And some of you who already have it probably already know. So they are cheaper to operate, and that is doubly true here, since how many people are heating with oil? Ah, yes. Well, one of the most expensive fuels we have. And heat pumps use electricity, and we are fortunate that our Hudson Light and Power has one of the lowest rates, and also in the state, the lowest rates in the state, and also the majority of it is clean energy, clean technology, carbon-free. They're quiet and efficient cooling and heating. Anybody who've ever had a window air conditioning know that this hum of noise, yet heat pumps are quiet. They're clean technology that reduces our carbon footprint, which is becoming even more dramatically needed as we talk. And the technology has improved, so it really works in our cold weather. So this is why we're talking heat pump. The other thing we're talking about that is because we, Sustainable Stow, along with Green Hudson, have been accepted to be part of a program by the state called HEATSMART. And that program is a partnership between DOER, I'll go acronyms, what can I say, Department of Energy Resources and Massachusetts Clean Energy. They've gotten together because they really want to push cleaner cooling and heating technologies. And that means that this program increases the access by doing community group buying so that we can do it cheaper. We can start installing it cheaper. So we got accepted, and we are going to be promoting and selecting installers who will do 3 technologies. Air source heat pump, which is ductless mini splits, and those who are in Stow know that we already have a ductless in the library, and those who've been to First Parish know that we have some ductless mini splits all throughout the building, and whole house ductwork with ductwork. So we'll be doing those 2 on air source and ground source heat pumps. So it's those 3 technologies we'll be promoting. So I want to tell a little about Sustainable Stow and Green Hudson, a little about us. So Sustainable Stow is a group that's been operating for what, 10 years. We started out as the Energy Working Group. But we have now moved to changed our title, but really have done things like our Stow Solar Challenge. Anyone participate in the Stow Solar Challenge? Okay, because we were doing that throughout the Stow, and a lot of people have put panels up. We also have installed, didn't mean to do that, have gotten the Green Community designation, and that allowed us to get extra money to the town to start doing things. For that, we've done educational forums and that type of thing, and this is one of them. Green Hudson, and I'd like those who, we have some representatives from Green Hudson here. If you just raise your hand, Jeanette and Tom, right there, our partners. They are also a volunteer-led group that is working with the Hudson residents to do very similar things that we're doing. So let me go quickly to, well, one thing I forgot to mention. Anyone who's member of Sustainable Stow, just raise your hand so people can see. Great. So you see we have a number of people there that you can certainly talk about the group afterwards. So let me briefly go through the agenda. I just talked about HEATSMART. We'll then have a presentation by Karen Schuming, who from Hudson Light and Power, will talk about our partnership with Hudson Light and Power and their rebates for heat pumps during this program that we have. After that, we'll have an overview of air source heat pumps by Ryan Flynn from Mitsubishi, and we want to thank him for coming out on a Saturday to do this. We'll be talking about whole house and mini splits, and have a Q&A after it so you can ask more specific questions. We then have a video about ground source heat pumps, just to have an understanding of what those are. We will end up about energy audits, which is a great thing to do prior to installing heat pumps, just so that you can maximize their efficiency. And then we'll have a timeline for our HEATSMART program, so that you have an understanding. So, with that agenda, any questions? Then I'd like to turn it over to Karen Schuming.
Good morning, I'm Karen Schuming from the Hudson Light and Power Department. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the relationship between Hudson Light and your community's HEATSMART efforts. In 2018, the Light Board voted to partner with Hudson and Stow to promote the two communities' efforts to become HEATSMART communities. We lobbied the state to highlight the reasons why our communities were perfect choices using these 4 areas, which I'll touch on in the slides. The first, as far as our portfolio goes, our carbon footprint, 90% of our electricity is generated from greenhouse gas-free sources, which gives an extremely small carbon footprint. As this fuel mix indicates, most of our long-term contracts involve nuclear power. As these long-term contracts expire, we plan to replace them with renewables, so our footprint will not only be clean, it will be green. Part of our portfolio includes the output from 2 local solar fields and distributed generation from our photovoltaic customers. On installations, the Hudson Light partnered with the town of Hudson to install an EV charging station on South Street there. And as you may know, we've also worked with Tesla, which has a charging station up at Highland Commons. The output from the savings from the EV charging station on South Street alone has helped reduce our carbon footprint, as you can see by this report. Another installation has been the replacement of municipal streetlights to all LEDs, which we completed this year. We invested about $332,000 into the program, and this table compares the cost of the old streetlights as compared to the new ones and the kilowatt hour savings. It's about 59% savings. Our rebates and incentives at Hudson Light are funded through 2 different charges on your bill, the RCS charge and the receipt charge. In anticipation of the HEATSMART program, we increased the RCS charge from 24 cents to 55 cents a month. And these are the programs that charge covers. In 2018, we funded more than $76,000 in residential rebates and audits. Of particular interest to this seminar is our heat pump rebate. In addition to the state initiatives that we'll see through HEATSMART, the Hudson Municipal Light Board has voted to double the heat pump rebate. It was $500 for heat pump participants. HEATSMART participants, it has been increased to 1,000. What we expect to see is that it's an Energy Star installation. It's in the primary residence, and it's for residential accounts, obviously. A heat pump installation should be Energy Star. This slide is from the Energy Star site. So we asked for the AHRI certificate, which shows that the installation meets certain SEER and EER guidelines. You can get those through your contractor. We contract with Energy New England for home energy audits. They're free. Energy New England can be contacted by phone or through their customer website. The website is new and it's marvelous. There's a lot of information on it that you can get in addition to signing up for audits. The home assessment focuses on optimizing energy usage and reducing bills. It is scheduled directly with the customer, and Hudson Light gets the bill. According to Energy New England, LED light bulbs installed during residential energy audits last year saved the equivalent of 11.1 metric tons of carbon dioxide. Our receipt program is funded by the monthly charge of $0.50 per kWh, and it covers these programs listed. Since its inception in 2011, we have funded nearly $900,000 in upgrades, rebates, and incentives through the receipt program. Our solar incentives are recognized as among the most generous in the state. Currently, we are partnering with the state on a matching solar incentive program that we expect to be launched soon. This program should increase the total incentive that a customer can earn from Hudson and the states. There will be links on the Energy New England site and on our own site to the program once it's finally launched. We're waiting on the DOER on that. In 2018, we purchased almost 600,000 kilowatt hours from our solar customers. As far as installing an electric heat pump, electric rates do matter. If you are upgrading and not expanding your existing heat pump system, you should see a savings on your electric bill. If you're replacing an oil or a gas system, you may see an electric bill increase, but fortunately our rates are among the lowest in the state, as shown by this chart released by MWIC, the Massachusetts Municipal Electric Company, at the end of the year. We are very low rates. So by going to a heat pump, not only is it environmentally friendly, but it's economically sensible too. Our commercial rates are also very competitive. Thank you for having me here. I put this up if you want to get in touch with us, if you have questions or suggestions. And this presentation is also available online, or I can mail it out to you if you don't have access. We're at hudsonlight.com. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to get a couple more chairs because I know that, and there are some seats in the front. I know people just at that. I'd like to introduce another member of Sustainable Stow, Mike Duclos, who will introduce our next speaker.
So I'm Mike Duclos. I live off Whitman Road in Stow, and I'm an energy consultant. I help people design high-performance homes and multifamily homes. The first time I used an air source heat pump was in 2008 as a part of a zero net energy competition. And we were concerned because we didn't know anything about heat pumps. It turned out it worked very well. It happened to be a Mitsubishi machine. So I was at a conference in Westford, Massachusetts this past summer, and a colleague introduced me to Ryan Flynn of Mitsubishi, your speaker. And so we talked a bit, and then I saw Ryan again at the North American Passive House Conference last September. And we were in a session, unsurprisingly, talking about field studies of heat pumps. So I saw some things there that were interesting, and Ryan very generously offered quite a number of hours of his time to review and refine a presentation that I've created from that and presented at places like Passive House, Massachusetts, Mass CEC, and the Northeast HERS Alliance. So I'm very appreciative of all that support that Ryan's given me, and in fact, I've received excellent support from Mitsubishi. If I send an email to their engineering staff, which is just located in the Southborough, I will typically get an answer back within an hour or two if they are in the office. So Ryan is a performance manager for Mitsubishi, and he has brought with him Brian Christman. Ryan is from New Jersey, and Brian is local. So without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Ryan.
Thank you, Mike. Morning, everybody. Again, I'm Ryan Flynn and my colleague Brian Christman. The two of us have a lifetime in the heating and air conditioning industry. We've installed, serviced, sold, and designed heating and air conditioning systems for a couple of decades. But today, Brian and I spend our days as air source heat pump experts, and excited to be with you this morning, so thank you for the invitation. Air source heat pumps and ductless mini splits, what a strange bunch of words. We're going to attempt to share with you this morning what all of those words mean and share a little bit more insight to the technology for approximately 30 minutes. And then we have another 15 allocated for questions. So if you have questions, please hold them for 30 minutes, but remember them because we want the questions. I realize the wording here is a little small, but I wanted to point out that the DEP Commissioner, Judith Johnson, recently wrote and was quoted, "Our goals for 2019 to 21 Mass Save Energy Efficiency Plan includes significant increases in incentives for air source heat pumps, which offer a clean, cost-effective option to heating and cooling our homes and businesses." And to try to give a little bit of insight on why this initiative, heating and cooling is the largest consumer of energy in our homes and buildings, and energy is precious. Just to share in a little bit of a broader scope, those strange words, air source heat pumps and ductless mini splits, those are the technologies that dominate the heating and cooling industry all around the world, with the exception of here in North America. So as you travel around the world, if you have the fortunate opportunity to vacation and travel, and you look around in the buildings where you spend your time, you'll find air source heat pumps driving the heating and the cooling all over the world, with the exception of here in North America. However, here in North America, the product is gaining quite some traction, and the technology is really improving the way that we find healthy, comfortable, energy-efficient buildings compared to the way we've been doing this for years. When I started working for Mitsubishi Electric 5 years ago, that was a 4 over North America. And this slide is about 18 months old. It was an 8. So we were tracking on increasing what's called market penetration in the heating and cooling industry by greater than 1 point per year. And then I'll move on from the point. So for every 100 heating and air conditioning systems sold in the US, it was only 4 out of 100 that were the technology that Brian and I represent. And like I say, that gains about 1 point per year. We'll likely approach 10 by the end of 2019. The air source heat pump technology came to North America back in the mid-80s. Mitsubishi Electric was in the US in 1984, largely known by the Mr. Slim product, which was a cooling unit that could be found in 3 season rooms, often hanging on the wall in the sunroom. Today, it's evolved quite a bit. Today, we're a powerful heating and also a cooling solution that could be used not just in the sunroom, but for the entire home. And with a wide variety of products available in the industry, across manufacturers. I don't in any way want this to be a Mitsubishi sales presentation. This is true of all of our competitors as well. A wide variety of products giving you a variety of ways to use this as a whole house application for, again, a comfortable, energy efficient space. A little bit about the technology. We're going to utilize a video to give just a little bit of insight. And my friend Arnie's going to get us started.
In the past, conventional heat pump systems were known for their poor efficiency and performance in cold weather temperatures. But that was then. This is today. Mitsubishi Electric Cooling and Heating's revolutionary heat pump technology and our zoned comfort solutions can give everyone in your home total personalized comfort year-round, even in sub-zero temperatures. Here's how they work. Mitsubishi Electric's ultra-efficient heat pump systems consist of an indoor air handling unit and an outdoor condensing unit, which are connected via 2 refrigerant lines. Together, they work to efficiently transfer the desired cooling or heating energy to your personalized comfort zones. In summer, air conditioning is produced when heat energy from inside your home is absorbed by the system's refrigerant and transferred to the outdoor air. In winter, the refrigerant cycle is reversed, and the system extracts heat from the outdoor air and transfers it inside to heat your home. For those requiring high-performance heating in colder temperatures and climates, our expert engineers have developed hyperheating inverter technology. Our hyperheating outdoor units use an enhanced compressor design to continue extracting heat energy, even when the true outdoor temperature reaches down to -13 degrees Fahrenheit. When compared to other fossil fuel burning heating systems, our modern heat pumps provide exceptional heating performance while being a greener, more environmentally friendly option for your home. All of this is possible due to our advanced variable speed inverter compressor technology, which results in our systems using up to 40% less energy than conventional systems. In addition, a single outdoor unit can control up to 8 indoor units for added comfort and efficiency, with multiple styles available for added versatility. Our indoor units also feature true air filtration for your home, resulting in improved air quality with whisper quiet operation, perfect for any home, even a baby's nursery. For close to 100 years, Mitsubishi Electric has built a global reputation on quality and reliability. Our innovations continue to make cooling and heating more efficient, comfortable, and healthy. For more information, visit us at MitsubishiComfort.com. Mitsubishi Electric Cooling and Heating. Make comfort personal.
I hope that that short video helped folks to understand the idea that we're not using electricity to make heat with a heat pump. We're using electricity to extract heat from another source. And there's a multiplier effect that comes with that. So in other words, if everybody could picture a toaster oven uses electricity to make heat. The electricity runs through the elements get red and hot, and arguably that's 100% efficient. It has what's called a coefficient of performance of 1, which means if you spend $1 on heat and you're using a toaster oven to create the heat, you get back $1 worth of heat. $1 in, $1 out. Coefficient of performance of 1. If you have electric baseboard heat, it has a coefficient of performance of 1. For every $1 you spend on heat, you get back $1 worth of heat. With an air source heat pump, or a ground source heat pump, we're using technology and refrigerant to extract the heat from another source, which is either the air or the ground. And we're enjoying a multiplier effect, and we're getting back more than that $1 on the $1 that we've spent. So depending on the weather and depending on the model, you spend $1 for heat, you get back $2 or $3 worth of heat. And it's that multiplier effect that makes this exciting for a heat pump nerd like me. Ground source heat pumps don't extract heat from the air like in that video. They extract heat from the ground, but similar concept. Changing gears a little bit, these are also driven by what are variable speed called inverter compressors. So if we were to first take a look at traditional heating and cooling equipment, in this country, the other 92% of the market has single speed equipment largely. When in this picture we're depicting cooling. Cooling is the opposite of heating. It's just a heat pump running in reverse. If we had a 90-degree space and we wanted 75, the unit would come on and run until we got the space to the desired temperature, and then it would turn back off. And it would come on and off throughout the day, and when it's on, it would run at one speed and one speed only, and we'd see a little bit of temperature fluctuation. With a variable speed inverter compressor, that unit comes on and it doesn't run only at one speed, it varies. It could go really fast and hard, or it could run slow and gently. But it'll work really fast and hard to get us to set temperature quickly, and then it will revert to a much slower and more energy efficient mode. Very similar to when you put your car on cruise control on the highway and the fuel consumption goes down. The units are also extremely quiet. We have some of the quietest heating and cooling solutions in the industry with variable speed air source heat pumps, if and when architects and designers are putting together systems for sound rooms and spaces where noise is critical. Our types of equipment are usually selected because they are indeed so quiet. But perhaps near and dear to many of your hearts is the money part of it. This particular chart here depicts how much heat you get out of $1 using a variety of fuels. And I'm going to explain this. I don't want it to be confusing. And I'm going to point out that this particular chart, it was based on numbers provided by Mike for local utility costs. So what this is suggesting is a unit of heat is known as a BTU, a British thermal unit. Heating and cooling equipment is sized in terms of its BTU capacity. And in this chart of how many BTUs you get out of $1, we compare the fact that, for example, you could get about 27 or 28,000 BTUs of heat out of a toaster oven or electric resistance heat, where you could get 84,000 BTUs of heat for that same dollar using an inverter-driven heat pump, if it had an efficiency or a COP of 3. That's that multiplier effect we were speaking about. And we can compare to oil, propane, natural gas, or heat pumps. The heat pumps are located in 4 different places in red, showing that we could get quite a bit of heat for the dollar out of a heat pump, depending on its efficiency. And its efficiency will vary a little bit, depending on how cold it is outside. So we're extracting heat from the air outside. And on a mild day, when there's a lot of heat in the air, that's easy to do. And the coefficient of performance will be closer to 2. And on a very cold day, when it's 5 degrees outside, there's less heat in the air. It's harder for the equipment to extract the heat and bring it in. We might see a coefficient of performance closer to 2. Fortunately, that graph looks great here in Stow because Hudson Power and Light has a very affordable cost per kilowatt, the second lowest on the chart. We saw this differently in the last presentation, but again, these are all of the municipal electric providers here in Massachusetts. And the way I understand it is you're spending about 12 cents per kilowatt. So heating with electricity is attractive here. I live in central New Jersey and spend close to 20 cents a kilowatt. Significantly higher cost for electricity. This is still an attractive technology, but not nearly as attractive as it is when you have such an affordable electric rate. For years, heat pumps couldn't heat a house in the cold. We just didn't have the technology, but that has changed. I'm going to talk about first something that's not on the chart, then I'll comment on the 2 items on the chart. First, traditional single-speed heat pumps, they could provide heat, and this is the heating capacity at 100%. They could provide heat down to about 40 degrees. And then they need to turn off, and a backup system comes on, which is typically electric resistance. $1 put in, $1 of heat received. Now we have inverter variable speed heat pumps that have the ability to produce heat down to lower temperatures. And our standard models in the industry will produce 100% of their capacity, their heating capacity, down to about freezing, about 32 degrees. And then their capacity begins to drop off. On the coldest day of the year, they generate about half of their rated capacity, those standard heat pumps. But we also have something else in the last 6 or 7 years. And those are cold climate heat pumps that have the technology within to use this refrigerant technology to extract heat out of the air outside when it's cold, and do so that you don't lose capacity down to approximately the coldest day of the year. And the cold climate models that we represent produce 100% of their capacity down to 5 outside, but they continue creating and generating, not generating, but extracting and bringing into the space lots of heat down to very cold temperatures. This particular chart shows that of a specific model, a 3-zone, 30,000 BTU model with 88% rather of its heating capacity when it's minus 13 outside. So these models used to not work in the cold. Today they absolutely do. And you get the bonus of air conditioning. You put in an efficient heating system, and all of a sudden you also have an efficient air conditioning system, which is a really nice icing on the cake, if you will, with this kind of a decision. I don't expect that folks in the room are familiar with efficiency numbers of air conditioner numbers, but an SEER, a seasonal energy efficiency ratio of 19, is an extremely respectable and high efficient rating for an air conditioning unit. And then that multiplier effect. I don't want these slides to be too overwhelming or confusing, but I want to point out that what this is saying is these numbers vary, but they tend to always be good. So the coefficient of performance is how much heat we get when we put in $1, and what this is saying is with the unit running at maximum capacity, if you needed all of the heat that it had to extract, you put in $1, you get back $3.95 in heat. And at minimum capacity, you put in $1 and you get back $6 worth of heat. At 17 degrees outside, those numbers drop. You put in $1 and you get back less than $3 worth of heat. At minimum capacity, you're still getting back over $4. And on a super cold day, you get back between $2 and $4 worth out of that $1 worth of heat. And I know I'm belaboring this point, but it's important that everybody understands that we will be using electric for heating with this technology, but this is not electric resistance heat. It is very different. NEAP, the Northeast Energy Partnership, is providing lots of tools and resources to both contractors and homeowners alike with choosing equipment to capitalize on this technology well. So they're providing, I would encourage, if you're interested, to go on the neap.org website and take a look, because NEAP is providing guidelines for selecting and designing systems in a variety of scenarios, for a whole house, for just part of a house, for a hot and cold spot, or in conjunction with your alternate heating sources using what's called a displacement approach. If you had an oil boiler, for example, with a displacement approach, you'd put an air source heat pump in the house and it would displace the runtime of the less efficient technology in the space, and you would have both. But irrelevant of which approach you would want to take, or if you were trying to figure out what approach made the most sense, this particular organization could be very helpful, and the neep.org website, in addition to providing those application notes, also provides a listing of all of the models that they're blessing, if you will, in the industry. So there are 23 manufacturers now in the country selling air source heat pumps, and lots of models that claim to be okay for cold climates. And many of them are, and some of them not so much. And this particular organization will help you sort through and figure out which models and which brands are safe to use in your cold climate. I mentioned that there are a lot of options across the industry with the particular organization that Brian and I work for. We have 5 different indoor unit types with at least a dozen different models to choose from. And those could be indoor units that hang high on a wall, which we're commonly known for. Units that go down low on the wall, much like a radiator would sit down low on a wall. Units that go in the ceiling in a variety of shapes and sizes. And then we also have units that would be hidden in a basement or somewhere else that you would connect some ductwork to. You could potentially remove a propane-fired furnace, for example, and you could replace it with an inverter heat pump air handler connecting to that same ductwork. Again, using either a whole house approach or a displacement approach with a wide variety of options. And we have a wide network of contractors that are trained and experienced in this in the industry. And I would encourage each of you to engage with 2 or 3 of those folks perhaps and identify who you're most comfortable with, who's giving good design advice, and find what meets your needs best. These models come in a variety of ways. They come in single zone systems. They come in multiple zone systems. Multiple zone systems would have more than one indoor unit connected to the same outdoor unit. And I put this slide up to also illustrate that you'll find in the industry across brands that some models are appropriate to be used as a cold climate sole source air source heat pump, and others are not. So it's important that you're mindful of that and that you select the right models as you move ahead. If you move ahead. How are we doing on time?
About 10 minutes.
Thank you. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds, but I want to point out some of these units. The technology is quite remarkable. This particular unit here has 2 different vanes on the front of the unit. It can direct the air up or down, left or right, and the 2 vanes could operate independently of one another. If you were putting one of these in an L-shaped space, they could be blowing in both directions at the same time. This particular model has a little infrared sensor located on it that's constantly scanning the room 180 degrees left and right, identifying if there are any hot or cold spots in the room. The blower motor is gently and quietly moving in the background. And if the system identifies that someone had left the side door open and it's cold over here on my left, that unit would identify that and the blower would ramp up and it would mix the air around and add heat over there until the temperature in the room is even. And then it would revert back to its gentle run. This almost gets ridiculous, admittedly, but with the ability to sense the location of the humans in the room, the controller that comes with this, we can select whether we want it to blow the air on the people or not blow the air on the people. Direct and indirect airflow mode. And I'm just using these as examples to give insight as the level of complexity to the technology and the comfort that it could provide. If you don't want that air blowing on you, you'd set it in indirect airflow mode and it would make sure to not blow the air on you. Last ridiculous comment about that. It knows the difference between a person and a dog because it's looking for the 98.5-degree people, not the 103-degree dogs. It's pretty smart. And these images just depict some of those features that I was just sharing about. I particularly like this floor standing model in cold climates when you're concerning yourself mostly with heat as opposed to air conditioning, because these low wall models have the ability to really do a remarkable job of blanketing the floor with warm air to keep your feet warm. And this particular image doesn't really do that justice, but what this image is trying to illustrate is that a lot of these units, they raise the temperature of the air by about 30 degrees. So it pulls the 65-degree cold air off the floor and would normally supply it back out at 95, 100 degrees. This particular model takes some of that 95, 100-degree air, feeds it right back into its own return, mixing with the cold air on the floor. So maybe now the average temperature of the air coming into the unit, if for the example was 85 degrees, add 30, 35 degrees to that. Now it comes out the other end at 115, 120-degree air. And when it gets that hot, the little louver swivels and blankets the floor with that warm air. So technology is here to really do a remarkable job of making you comfortable. And those systems also come in cold climate varieties that can support multiple indoor zones connected to one unit if that's what's most appropriate for your space, with the ability to mix and match the types of indoor units selected. And a lot of these things that I'm saying hold true across manufacturers, not just with the manufacturer that I'm employed by. A couple of images. That's an installed wall-hung unit with the two vanes that I was speaking to a moment ago. Our newest ceiling model happens to fit conveniently between the beams when they're 16-inch on center framing, which is so common, so you don't need the framers to come in and modify the ceiling before this will fit in your ceiling, so that's quite convenient. An up-close image of a recently installed floor standing model, just to give a greater sense of what that looks like. An image of an outdoor unit. These outdoor units, by the way, if being used as the only source of heat, should not be down on the ground, buried by a drift of snow. They ideally would be elevated up out of the drift of snow, where they'll have an easier time getting the job done. Here at Mitsubishi Electric Trane, where I work, we have a great network of local trained contractors, which we call diamond contractors. We could go on I don't think we have internet access here this morning, but we could go on that website that was mentioned in the video, www.mitsubishicomfort.com, and we could enter your zip code. And when you enter your zip code, a list of our network of trained contractors would pop up for the purpose of getting some free consultative advice. A customized solution is generally free. With that network of contractors, they have the ability to discuss pricing. They have access to one of the best product warranties in the industry, equipment that's been installed and registered by one of our diamond contractors, achieves a best-in-class 12-year warranty on the parts and the compressor. And they'd be able to discuss and address which incentives would apply based on the model selected and the location. Upon installation, one would expect a tour of the system and an understanding of how it works. The warranty registration would occur through the contractor in order to achieve that 12 years coverage that I mentioned. Preventative maintenance contracts would be made available, and you would enjoy a more comfortable, healthy, and energy efficient home. Which brings us to the point that we're here to answer questions. Yes, sir.
Great. So thank you, Mike, and I will be repeating the questions because I haven't told you, we are taping this for Stow TV, and they really like us to use the mic. So, question?
Yes, I forget the term, but how long does it take to pay the system off? Do you have historical data on that?
Yeah. How long does it take to pay the system off? What is the feedback on that?
It's a really hard question to answer because it varies so greatly depending on what you're doing now and how efficient or inefficient that is. Typically, for best results, there would be a combination of tightening up the home and employing an energy efficient technology. But I would have to suggest that that'd be a great question to address with a contractor, and I'm not trying to deflect the question. We have tools in our laptops that we could identify what your heating or cooling loads are in the space, and with that information combined by local utility rates and an understanding of the existing equipment's efficiency, which we could get off of its nameplate, and the efficiency of a model being selected, we can calculate how much money you would save in the course of a year. And on some homes, it's a couple $100s a year, and on others, it's clearly a 4-digit number in the thousands, and it just depends.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Adam.
Sure. So aside from the one negative thing you mentioned, which it won't operate below minus 13 Fahrenheit, which I'm not too worried about. Surely there's some other downside in some scenario. I mean, for example, we've got fully ducted, air conditioning and heat. So we'd be saving lots of money. It's more efficient. What might we notice that's negative?
Okay, so I'm just going to paraphrase that. What are some of the negative sides of using a heat pump?
We get a lot of resistance on having that unit hanging on the wall. I'm going to expand on the minus 13. Those units with that hyperheat technology, that's a product designation with the red and yellow H2I logo. Those particular models will continue to run and generate lots of heat down to minus 18. At minus 18, they'll turn off and take a break until the sun comes out in the morning. And at minus 14, they turn themselves back on. So they turn themselves off and take a break at minus 18. They turn themselves back on at minus 14. And the marketing department generates slides that illustrate capacity at that minus 13 number. We get some complaints about the unit on the wall. Brian, do you have anything to add to that question? Or Brian Chrisman, everybody.
If you lose power, you'd have to have a large generator to operate the system, right? So an oil or a propane furnace would require a smaller generator. So you'd have to have a backup source of heat that required a lower power source.
Any other questions? Oh, Alan.
I was just thinking about downsides. My forced hot air heating system right now has a humidifier pad on it to add humidity to the air. You're not getting any humidity with your air source.
So the question is around humidity and whether you get any humidity with the heat pumps.
You don't actually get any humidity out of the heat pumps, you're absolutely right. But in the same manner that you have an accessory humidifier added to your furnace, you could get an accessory humidifier and add it to an air handler, which by design is there to replace the furnace. So you're not ruling out the ability to add a humidifier necessarily, but it would require that you remain with the duct system and you used another ducted indoor unit in order to achieve that. Should you go to our most efficient models, which tend to be the ductless units, and some of the other images there, you would lose the ability to incorporate a humidifier into that. And I sense that Brian may have something to add, or?
With our systems, because we're not using inside air for combustion, and there's not a whole lot of air changes, we have less of a need for humidity. But if you needed a humidifier, there are standalone models that are separate from a ducted system or the ducted heat pump.
Okay.
That fossil fuel firing appliance that you have today, it's burning air from in the house, and it's letting it up the chimney. And as you continue burning air and letting it go up the chimney, outside air is going to come back into the house. The house will be in a negative pressure. You'll open the door and the house needs some extra air because it's losing air up the chimney, and that's what Brian's referring to with that.
Okay, yes, Lynn.
I wonder how much condensate comes off of it and how is that handled
Yeah.
for the
So-
air conditioning unit?
So the question is around the air conditioning unit, how much condensation comes off the unit?
So the more the better. When we're in cooling mode and we're dehumidifying, there'll be a lot of condensation at the indoor unit. All of the indoor units have a little pipe that comes out the back, and you need to bring that out into the landscaping or the slop sink in the basement, or however the installer chooses to address that. But I'll make the comment that condensate is strictly a summertime issue with cooling. You wouldn't have any condensate in heating mode in the winter. So if it was being dumped out on the sidewalk, for example, you wouldn't ever have to worry about it freezing because it's only an air conditioning season issue, if you will.
Okay, other questions? Sure, Dave.
What, if any, annual maintenance requirements are there?
What are any annual maintenance requirements?
We have no need to replace or refill the refrigerant gas, which is the magic that makes all of this work, but it's very appropriate that you have someone come out frequently and keep the equipment clean.
How frequent?
Annual cleaning. These units all have filters within them. When you open the cover, there's a washable filter. You'd take the cover out, you'd wash it in the sink, you'd dry it in the sunlight or on the drying rack, and pop it right back in there, and that should be done more frequently, perhaps monthly. It really depends on the space. At my mother's house, every time I look at her filter, it's always clean. It never seems to be dirty, but I've seen others that looks like someone might want to be cleaning it every other week. It really depends on the space. But as far as having a professional come out, I would recommend that you have that done annually.
Okay. Yes.
Are there any restrictions as far as the linear distance that the ductless systems can be for the indoor unit versus the outdoor compressor?
Yeah. So are there any restrictions around linear feet between the ductless and the outdoor unit?
There are. Thank you for asking. That answer depends on the model. The single zone systems, where it's one outdoor unit connected to one indoor unit, you have a maximum of 65 feet of distance between the two. The unit comes from the factory pre-charged with refrigerant for up to 25 feet. So if you have 25 feet or less on that distance, no need for the installer to add refrigerant. We've done it properly at the factory. When you get up to 40, 50, 60 feet, you would indeed need to add some refrigerant. And if you went over 65 feet, we'd find another model that allows you to go to 100. Some of the multi-zone systems allow you to have almost 500 feet of pipe on a system, 82 feet to each of the zones. So I think the right answer is 65 on a single zone, 82 on a multi-zone. His body language tells me he wants to say something.
So one other thing that you want to ask for, and this is the case of any manufacturer on a multi-zone system, you want to make sure that they're using the software that we provide to design the system, because we have different capacities at different lengths when we have multiple units connected to an outdoor unit with a longer lines.
Yes. Follow-up question?
Another concern with any system based on refrigerants is the environmental impact on the refrigerants. CFCs are a major cause of environmental degradation, so we need to understand just what you guys are using and how safe is it.
So the question is around refrigerants and the environmental impact of those refrigerants? And
So the refrigerants that are used in the industry are bad for the environment. The refrigerant that we were using as an industry up until around 2002 was called R22, and it had a greater negative impact on the environment than the refrigerant that we've been using since, which is R410A. And that's true across all manufacturers. That's what we're using is R410A. I think it's critical that a good installation is done, because a good installation will include secure pipe connections and mechanical connections so that we're not leaking or losing any refrigerant into the atmosphere. I have seen some novice installed, poorly installed systems that have leaks, and people refill the charge once a year because it leaks slowly. That's terrible for the environment. But having a system that's properly pressure tested prior to opening it up and allowing that refrigerant to run for no leaks would be critical. And then at the end of the life of the system, it should be properly evacuated to never be let into the environment. But it's certainly a reasonable concern.
Okay, I'm going to have one more question. We will have time afterwards for more questions, but we want to move on because I know some people want to do. So who wants? Oh, okay.
I have a follow-up on the linear distance. What about vertical distance? Some of our living space is below grade, and the outside unit would be above it. You know, what kind of vertical issues?
Yeah, thank
So
you.
what is the vertical distance?
Most of the models have a maximum vertical distance between indoor and outdoor units of 49 feet, which gives us a problem in a 5 or 6 story building, but not in a residential application. And it varies by model. Brian and I are going to hang around. I realize that several of you still have your hands up and we're out of time. We're going to hang around for discussion later.
Great. Well, thank you again.
You're welcome.
Very much appreciate it. I do want to take a moment just to let you know that through the HEATSMART program, we are looking to evaluate installers, and we'll be making a recommendation to the community about installers. But this has been great because I now have a lot of questions I'm going to ask our panel, because we've already have a number of people who've made proposals to be part of this program, and we will have a review team that will be evaluating that. Okay, so our next section now is to look at a brief video about ground source heat pump. It's not going to have as technical information here, but it'll give you more of a sense of how the ground source works in a little more detail than the air was on that.
We all want to save money heating and cooling our house or office, right? The answer may be under your feet, literally. Much of the heating and cooling can come from the ground, below the surface, with something called a geothermal heat pump. You see, below the frost line, about 10 feet down, the Earth maintains a nearly constant temperature of 54 degrees. We can tap into this energy to provide heating in the winter and cooling in the summer. Okay, now here's how it works. Bury a loop of pipes, called a heat exchanger, just below the surface, and fill them with water or a water and antifreeze solution. During the winter months, the air is usually cooler than the temperature below ground. The solution circulates in a loop underground and absorbs the Earth's heat. This heat is brought to the surface and transferred to a heat pump. The heat pump warms the air, and then your regular heating system warms the air some more to a comfortable temperature. Finally, ducts circulate the air to the various rooms. Now, a huge benefit is that the geothermal system doesn't have to work as hard to make people inside comfortably warm, and you save lots of money on your heating bill. In the summertime, the system works in reverse. When it's hot outside, the temperature below the surface is cooler than the summer heat. So the fluid in the loop absorbs heat in the building and sends it underground. The ground's lower temperature cools it, and it's circulated again and again. Now you're saving money on air conditioning. Now, this church uses a large geothermal heat pump to heat and cool the building. It has a very big parking lot, which lets it spread out its loop horizontally. But if you don't have all that space, you can go straight down and use a vertical loop system instead. Geothermal heat pumps can be used just about anywhere in the U.S. because all areas have nearly constant shallow ground temperatures, although systems in different locations will have varying degrees of efficiency and cost savings. The constant temperature of the Earth just below our feet is a sustainable resource, literally in our own backyard. It's a clean energy source ready for us to use to heat and cool our homes and buildings while lowering our utility bills.
So that will be another technology that we will be promoting and taking a look at. So now I'd like to shift, as we said, Hudson Light and Power mentioned about audits. I'm going to have Rick Lent, a member of our Sustainable Stow, talk about his personal experience with having a free audit done and the advantages of having that done prior to thinking about doing a heat pump installation.
So we've been investigating heat pumps for a while, even back before we knew whether or not we were going to get accepted as a town by Mass CEC for the heat pump, for the HEATSMART program. And we've had a couple of contractors come out and talk to us, and we realized also that we needed to get an energy audit. We contacted Hudson Power and Light, and they sent us to Energy New England, ENE. And so an auditor came out from Energy, I call him an auditor, assessor, I don't, there's different words, came out from Energy New England. We had one of these done maybe 7 or 8 years ago in conjunction with something else we were doing, and Hudson Power Light and Power said, you know, you ought to get an audit done because that helps with any rebates. And so we did it. Well, this, if you've had one of these done before, how many people have had an energy audit done? How many of you had it done in the last year? It was different for me. I don't know whether it was different if you had an earlier one, you had a later one. No, at least in our house, he brought up some new things. He emphasized some different areas that we could improve the energy efficiency of our house. So that was great. That was sort of step one for us. And he provided a link to something we didn't know yet about called Home MVP, another acronym. It's another group that is part of the Mass Department of Environmental Resources, DOER. And they sort of sit beside Mass CEC, which is what the HEATSMART program is part of. So all of a sudden, I'm calling a contractor from the list from Home MVP that's in our area, because my audit said I need insulation. So I'm looking for an insulation contractor. The insulation contractor says, great, but we begin with an audit. Oh, okay. Gee, I thought I just had one. I can show you the report. He said, no. First, send us 13 months of your oil bills and 13 months of your electricity bills. And our auditor will come out and review your house. He came out and spent another 2 hours with us, free to us. All this is free. We haven't spent a dime yet. And we learned a whole bunch of other things. And one of the things that he learned was that what he was focused on, and the reason they asked for those 13 months, I mean, we were just looking for a quote for insulation, right? But what he did was he was able to point us to a bunch of other potential rebates from the Home MVP program. Rebates for insulation, rebates for different kinds of heating and cooling options, and so forth. We're still learning about those right now. I mean, this just happened to us Monday. So we're not that much ahead of the rest of you. And we talked to Mass CEC, the rest of our team, yesterday, and we said, how are these two programs going to interrelate? And basically they said, we're meeting on that now. So stay tuned. It's work in progress, but I thought you should know about that. Some people might say just go to go to a MVP contractor and get their audit, because that gets you to more stuff. But anyways, I'm happy I did the process I did. Let me say that. And what I want to emphasize here, if you're interested in what we're talking about this morning, set up your first audit as soon as you can. I know that E&E audits are scheduling now, I think, for April, last I heard. So they do back up. So you want to get on their schedule. They don't have that many auditors on their staff. We also have handouts in the back that can tell you more about all this, so make sure you pick up a handout on your way out. I think that's my last slide, yeah. So I've talked about both of those. I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Arnie. You were tracking behind me. Thank you. Okay, so those, I want you to know about that.
All right. I think what we'll do is we'll have Carol come up and tell what's next, and then we'll, so that everybody knows what our personal next steps are, and then we'll open it up for Q&A with anybody, any of our speakers. So.
I'm Carol Lynn. I'm with Sustainable Stow. And so we'll just do a quick rundown with what's next. First of all, something you might consider, what Rick just spoke about, is if you're interested in this, signing up for an energy audit. Sign up soon, because as Rick said, it may take a few weeks before they can, actually come out to you. And it's even worth doing even if you're not thinking of signing up for a heat pump. During the month of March, the two towns, Hudson and Stow, will be working with Mass CEC to interview installers and select the installers that will be working for our program. And then starting in April, we're going to have a series of Meet the Installer sessions. And those are educational sessions where you'll hear the installers talk about what it is they install and what their processes are. And you're welcome to bring your questions and ask the specific installers for the product you're interested in, how they go about it, what's their process, questions about your home, and they'll be there to answer those for you. We will also have a series of open houses, so that you can actually go and visit somebody's home where they have a heat pump installed. You can see the equipment, you can talk to them about their personal experience, and again, bring all your questions. And then following that, if you are interested in heat pumps, then you can sign up for a site visit with the installer, and he can walk through your home, and you can figure out what would work best for you. Next slide. So stay tuned for upcoming news. We will be, just like a lot of you heard about this through social media, we'll be posting all of our events through social media. We'll be putting events on the event sections of the local newspapers and the town websites.
Sustainable Stow.
Oh yeah, then the Sustainable Stow town website and Green Hudson as well. We will be also putting up flyers and sending out email notifications. And I know some of you heard about us through email notifications from Solarize Stow, and we did an email notification to a homeowners group at Boone Lake. And if any of you know of some email groups like that you think would benefit from getting this kind of news, just give us a hoot, let us know, and we'll send emails out to there. And then we also will have our website set up. It'll be HeatSmart HS for Hudson Stow, so heatsmarths.org. And we'll have all the events posted there, as well as a whole series of frequently asked questions, so answers for those, and pretty much everything you'll need to know about heat pumps out on that website. And if you need to get in touch with us, you can send us an email at info@heatsmarths.org, and someone will get back to you. And as Rick mentioned, we have a series of handouts out there. One has this information. There's another one on why heat pumps, and information on Sustainable Stow and Green Hudson.
Mike, you want to, we also, just before our Q&A, have a couple of public service announcements.
Right. So I'd probably not go home if I didn't mention this. On Wednesday, March 27th, The Organization for the Assimate Submarine Conquered Rivers, OARS, is holding their 11th Wild and Scenic Film Festival at the Maine and Fine Arts. My wife works for them, so now I can go home. On Wednesday, March 3rd through the 8th, Katrin Klingenberg is going to present a 3-hour introduction to multifamily passive house, if any of you are interested in that. On Thursday and Friday, March 14th, 15th, the Northeast Sustainable Energy Association, NESE, is holding their annual Building Energy 19 conference. This has to do not only with energy in buildings, there are certainly sessions on heat pumps, but also energy policy. We'll have a number of the policy makers in the state of Massachusetts on panels there, including Ian Finlayson, who works with building codes. Right now, he's been making a big push to have Massachusetts adopt a passive house building code, and also Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs Matthew Beaton, who happens to live in a passive house, and he'll be talking about energy policy. So if you have any interest in any of those, just come find me afterwards and I'll connect you. Thank you.
Okay. So I'd like to open it up for Q&A, but I do want to mention one other thing, is that this session will be offered in Hudson on Tuesday at 7 o'clock at the Avidia Bank, which is a community bank right in the main section. So if you know anyone who might be interested, who lives in Hudson or couldn't make this session or something, feel free to have them go, and there's information on our handouts for that. So without further ado, we still have our presenters here. Let's open it up for questions. The time now is like 10:15, so don't forget, take some handouts if you're interested in it, and we'll go with questions.
What is the time frame for this program, this current set of rebates, whatever? Is there a deadline for having installation?
Okay, once we get the installers going, it will run through October, end of October. We may get it extended, but just count on it being the end of October. Yes?
Do you anticipate any other financial incentives, zero interest loans or other rebates, or is it just the $1,000 from Hudson Light?
So the question was, sorry I didn't repeat the first one. Do we expect any additional rebates? Okay. Through the MVP program, there is a 0% financing option, and there are other incentives. We will be looking at that incentives and preparing a complete list of other incentives. So the $1,000 was great, but we certainly are looking for other incentives from the state as well as the incentive from the federal government. They haven't deleted that yet. Yes?
I just wondered what the start time would be for the program for the incentives. I've had 2 estimates already, so would I be eligible to participate in the program for rebate?
I think, yes, I think you would. When was Hudson Light and Power going to start?
Karen, no, she's gone. Okay, it's my understanding, so.
Arnie?
Sorry. So Hudson Light and Power has not finalized. If you go on their website, you won't see the $1,000 rebate yet, but my understanding is that once the program gets underway, and if you use a contractor through HeatSmart, we're still discussing whether or not, if you use not one of our selected installers, whether you would also qualify for their higher rebate. But it would be from the time the program starts, at least through the end of October, and I think you would need to submit some sort of paperwork to Hudson Light and Power showing at least that the contract was signed, during that period of time. So if you sign a contract prior to the start of the program, I don't think you would qualify for the rebate.
The starting date will be?
Technically, the starting date is April 1st. We have scheduled tentatively sometimes that we will have our big kickoff with our installers to be April 18th. But technically it starts at April 1st.
And just, if it's not part of the if it's not part of the HeatSmart program, Hudson Light and Power offers a $500 rebate. Just so you don't get nothing.
Yes. I'll go Alan, then I'll go Ann, and then I'll go Adam.
Are there any particular requirements for the rebate? For example, do you need to give up your existing furnace or boiler?
So are there any particular requirements for the rebates? I don't, I think Karen represented what requirements needed to be energy efficient for Hudson Light and Power, that those were the requirements. For the rebates that we're finding on the MVP, we're learning what the requirements are for that, so we don't have that. So Rick?
Yeah. There's one other thing that you may hear about. I don't know, you may want to comment on this, but at least, we got some quotes a couple of years ago, and the way the technology for heat pumps work, we were looking at whole house heat pump. They recommended then that you have a backup furnace, that if it gets so cold, it would switch over to some other secondary heating source. And so we considered keeping our existing oil-fired furnace so that it would kick on in an emergency if it got that cold. I am not so sure that if we got a quote today from one of the contractors we're talking to, that that would still be true, because I'm listening to the presentation this morning and I'm going, why would I still need the oil-fired furnace sitting in my basement?
If it got below -17.
If it got below -50. The next time we have a double polar vortex, maybe, but.
And the other thing would be is if we lost power.
Yeah. But hey, you still need power to turn on that little thing that runs your oil-fired furnace.
Wood stoves are wonderful.
Wood stoves are wonderful.
Okay, Ann.
Wait, we got another one.
I know.
I just want to add that you have to consider you're also going to want to generate domestic hot water. That may require some other equipment.
Okay, what was?
One last comment. We have a heat pump hot water heater now. It's separate from everything else. So it's an electric hot water heater using a heat pump, and the ambient air in our basement works great.
So the comment there was that we have to be mindful of heating our hot water. So Anne?
I may be mistaken, but when the solar challenge was on, my understanding was that the more households that signed up, the cheaper it would be. Is this going to be the same sort of deal?
They have not set up the program that way because heat pumps are different. And the reason why is because there are a lot of factors in terms of individual homes. So whether you get a mini split, whether you do that, we are thinking about it, of doing something around BTUs. How many BTUs are installed, could we then drop the price? And this is what we're exploring, and we need to explore it both with Mass CEC as well as talk to our installers about, is that a possibility? So we'll stay tuned. We'll let you know what we're doing. Adam.
So where could we get the level of detail on geothermal heat pump systems that Ryan gave us for the air source heat pumps?
We're going, when we have our installers, because we're selecting installers for both air source as well as ground source, they will be doing a much more detailed presentation around ground source. We just, at this point, we couldn't bring someone in. Okay? Yes?
You mentioned a federal incentive. Are you referring to a federal tax incentive, and what is it?
So the question was, I was referring to a federal incentive, and what is it? Arnie?
So for ground source heat pumps, the federal government reinstated a 30% tax credit for ground source heat pumps only, not for air source heat pumps. So that's, I believe,
Right. There is something around, so I just need to check, Arnie, there's something around energy efficiency on your tax, and whether that, if you did a heat pump, if that would qualify for some type of tax credit.
Sharon?
Yes,
I think it's
Mike.
a one-time $500. Last
Okay.
remember.
Unsubstantiated assumption here, I have that, it's a one-time $500 credit. So stay tuned, we'll follow up and get more detailed specific. Great question. Yes, John.
I just have my personal thought about a heat pump is for backup heat, but being able to probably have some air conditioning. If you get a cold climate system, it must make it more expensive than a non-cold climate, and does that make it still work well with cooling?
Okay, so the question here is if your focus was on cooling and not heating, do you, if you get a cold climate heat pump, is that more expensive or how that works? Okay, Mike, we'll need you to buy a microphone.
Sorry, that's Ryan.
Ryan, I'm sorry.
What we find is the cold climate models are about 30% more expensive for the outdoor unit. The indoor units are the same identical units. So there is an upcharge for the cold climate model. The cold climate models have better technology within. It's a more expensive compressor. It does a better job with cooling and a better job with heating than the former heat pumps did.
For the materials, not the overall cost.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And that particular 30% upcharge on the outdoor unit, that's simply for the piece of equipment, for the material that goes outside. A large part of the installation is labor. The labor is the same, the indoor units are the same. So it's by no means overall 30% more. There's just one piece to the puzzle that's more expensive, which is the piece of equipment outside, not including labor or indoor units, and it would outperform the standard model in both summer and winter. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So the subject of water heating came up. Is it possible to add a zone to heat water with your system?
Is it possible to add a zone to heat water with the system?
Domestic water heating happens to be part of our product line in other parts of the world, but not currently here in North America, perhaps in the future, not yet.
And there are other manufacturers that do.
There are indeed a few air source heat pump water heaters in the market today. What you're asking for is the convenience of being able to add that as just one of the many indoor units connected to that same multi-zone outdoor unit that you're already making the investment with, and I appreciate that. I do believe that you'll see that in the future.
I'm thinking of a situation where you would add a zone to your basement to cool the air in the basement, but you also have a hybrid water heater in the basement which is trying to extract heat from the air, and now the two are sort of working against each other.
Yeah, the hybrid water heater itself will do a remarkable job of cooling and dehumidifying the basement. It'll remove that heat from the basement and it'll add it to the water. If the basement were particularly small, it would be remarkably cold down there. I have seen people put the outdoor unit, if you will, which is the same concept, in the basement and freeze and crack all of their pipes. So one needs to know what they're doing in that regard.
So that's something to consider in your design.
That is definitely something to consider in their design. I've seen folks living in a small affordable housing unit, like a manufactured home, like what used to be known as a trailer, today is a manufactured home, where they have that heat pump water heater right inside that small space. And it gets particularly uncomfortable, so you don't want a heat pump water heater in your living room. But in a large basement, it would be fine. It really depends on the application.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I know it's probably too individualized to give a ballpark, but is there a range of the cost for, per 1,000 square feet? If you have, let's say 2,000 square feet, multi-zone, full house? the cost of installation and labor?
So the question is it possible to give a range of cost for, say, 2,000 square feet, multi-zone heat pump situation?
I'm not gonna have a good answer on this. It really depends on the house, it depends on the market. I spent my days working in the heat pump industry down in the southern part of New Jersey, which is very different than here. I don't know, Brian might wish to add. We're gonna see if we take the mic with us.
So it was less than a year ago, I was a Mitsubishi Dynamic contractor. So we get this question asked a lot at the home shows and over the phone, because let's face it, how many of you want to take up half of your Saturday or evening talking to a heat pump guy, right? So give me some idea of what this thing costs, because I'm not sure I even want you to come to my house, right? So I would say, there was some mass CEC data of, because they were collecting all this data of, what contractors were charging. But I would say to somebody over the telephone, on average, it would be $5,000 per indoor unit on multi-zone. And as the number got up higher, the cost would get lower. Okay, and on single zone units, could be more expensive, closer to 6, depending on what's involved. Some homes that only have a 100 amp service that need a 200 amp service upgrade. There's a lot of different variables, right? So a lot of people would appreciate that, because, geez, well, we saw some advertisement with a window AC with your equipment, and we were thinking, okay, if a window AC was $250, maybe this is a $1,500 thing, and it's not. Okay, so does that help?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I have a question about home value. So are there currently enough of these kind of operating in the area where, appraisers can find comparables and, impact the home value as you install these systems?
So if I've got the question right, it's about, will installing a heat pump system increase the value of one's home?
Yes. Yeah, in this
Okay.
area.
So I'll answer that a couple of ways, right? So one is, it is a real heating system, so that, an appraiser does recognize it as, a central, heating cooling system, depending on how many you have. And of course, if you've ever sat with an appraiser, I had one in my BNI, and there was a little checklist of air source heat pumps. So certainly that would add to the value of your home.
But if you're replacing a system, my home currently has heat. So
Does it have AC?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so it would raise the value, because then you could market your house that had central air. Yep.
As a non-technical person, the other thing that I would say, for those of you who have been following the news on climate change and projections for Massachusetts, in the next 20 or 30 years, all of our homes are going to have to get off oil and gas if we're going to get to net zero, which is what some of the current legislation is planning for the state to get to, let alone the country and the world. So if you look at a house that's got a 20 or 25-year-old heating or cooling system, our house, and it needs to be replaced, how many times am I going to replace that between now and, say, 2040? And if I was selling that house in 2030, it might be worth a lot less, because somebody's going to look at it and say, well, wait a minute, this heating system is now out of compliance in 10 years' time, or whatever, that none of us know. I'm predicting these dates. All we know is that it certainly will be by 2050, maybe it's by 2040. I don't know what the dates are, and we don't know what the requirements are yet. But it's a good thing to do for the environment, it's a good thing to do for the future of your house, and we're all going to have to do it in Massachusetts sooner or later. So, another way to look at the puzzle.
Alan?
Yeah, for those of us that are thinking about the whole house heat pumps, because we have forced hot air systems now and ductwork, are there issues with respect to the size of the ductwork. And I have no interest in replacing my ductwork, so.
So the question is, when you're thinking of a whole house, what are the constraints around the ductwork?
That's a great question. So what we typically find is, the oil furnace or the propane furnace is way oversized and the ductwork is way undersized. Okay, so you're not even realizing the heat that your furnace is putting out, right? So how we address those issues of there's a lot of ductwork that, like you said, people do not want to change. That's buried behind the walls, and nor do they want to bear the expense of it. So what we do is we evaluate the existing ductwork and we match the air handler to the existing ductwork. Okay, and then we'll add either wall-mounted ductless equipment, and sometimes up in the attic maybe some more ductwork. So that's how we typically do it. That works extremely well because most of those homes only have one thermostat. So, right, so a 2-story home.
Yes.
Right. So you have hot and cold spots all over the place, right? So now the first floor is much more comfortable because we're varying the capacity of that air handler, so it's the right size piece of equipment every single day, and then we're adding additional ductless pieces that also have, give us more heat and more temperature control. So.
I believe there was a hand over here.
I know that the state rebates for heat pumps are on a basis of per ton. How do I relate tons to BTUs an hour out of existing furnace?
So the question was that there was state rebates were based on tons, and the question was how to equate that to BTUs.
So it's 12,000 BTUs per ton.
Okay.
And the rebate is driven by the AHRI rating on the air conditioning tonnage, because that's consistent.
Okay, Anne.
Just interested in, with the geothermal, the heat pump stuff, the buried pipes, how often is there a problem with the pipes under the ground where you have to have your yard dug up?
Do you have an answer to that, Brian? Okay, the question was, for geothermal, when you have buried pipes, how often do you have to dig it up because there's a problem with the pipes?
So I grew up in a home that had a horizontal loop that was built in the 80s. We've never replaced it. The performance is good. That's the more reliable way to do it, right? So it's not the typical way we do it here in the Northeast because of ledge and real estate. They usually drill down, right? So if there's less water flow, right, that could be a problem, right? So our air-to-air heat pumps are more reliable because we can always rely on a constant airflow versus an unknown of water flow. I used to, say that we had more geothermal installations in Central Mass than anyone, and have a lot of experience in it. The trend is more towards the air source pumps.
Okay, question in the back.
Can you talk about the noise level of the units, both inside and out?
Sure. The question is, can you talk about the noise level of the units inside and out?
All heating systems make noise, okay? They're not silent. So early on, we talked about how quiet they were because ductwork typically, undersized with an oversized furnace is very noisy because the air is traveling at a very high rate of speed across that grill. Our systems are a lot quieter, but they're not silent, okay? Especially in, defrost mode, they're gonna make some noise, but they're, compared to, everything else, they're extremely quiet. Everybody's idea of quiet is different.
Actually, a follow-up to that, how would you compare the noise to the air compressor on a central air conditioning?
So an example would be, how could you compare the noise on an air compressor?
So, when we first started installing these, we'd wonder if they were really running because we couldn't hear them in comparison. when your neighbor's, traditional unit comes on and it's coming on at full capacity, you're hearing that, you're seeing the lights dim, where ours have a soft start. And typically, when we're talking about weather, right? We're designing to that extreme. Very, very seldom do we see those extreme temperatures, right? So our units are just chugging along, ramping up and ramping down, not banging on and off.
Yes, Rich?
Well, since you opened the topic, so you've mentioned several times and explained to us about the proportional control on the compressors. Is there also proportional control on the temperature sensing system in the house? In other words, are you still using bang bang, or are we off to another technology?
So the question is pressure?
No, so the one is that the compressors of the units can be throttled on and off gradually. They don't come on all at once. But that may not be true of the actual temperature sensors in the house, where in a typical traditional thermostat, when it reaches the set point, it goes on. And when it reaches the lower set point, it goes off. But it is possible to do proportional control, so that as the temperature in the house falls off during the winter, it throttles up the compressing units or the heat pump unit, so it gradually comes on and it keeps a more even temperature in the house.
So the question is,
I
think maybe I can.
Are the proportional controls available for the temperature sensing units as well as the compression?
Okay. Proportional control, temperature, are proportional controls available on the temperature
on
thermostats?
Okay. So because our systems, ramp up or ramp down, right, and they'll bang on and off, right, and then run the fan to bring that heat off the heat exchanger, we operate at a more even, comfortable temperature. However, we have basic controls and we have better controls for better control, right? So most of the wall-mounted units have this handheld remote, right, which I'm not a big fan of. I have the Kumo Cloud at my house, which I operate off my iPhone and iPad. But I have a remote temperature sensor on the wall in the space where I am, not up at the, up higher. So there is we do have better controls to sense the temperature. But that's, again, that's one thing that can drive people crazy, because they have different thermometers around the house that could be, if you put them side by side in the same spot, they're all different, right?
So, but are there temperature sensor thermostats that send a actual analog temperature to the compressor, or are they all just the same old, I need heat or I don't?
Well, our systems are looking at, what the gases coming into the, to the indoor unit, the outdoor unit, and the space. So we're looking at all three of those, and that's how we achieve the more comfortable, even temperature.
Yeah. So, Rich, I would suggest, if that didn't answer your question, when we close down, you can take it directly with him, okay?
Okay.
All right. Adam.
I'll try asking that question maybe a different way. Will these systems work well with whatever existing thermostat control we've got, or do you typically need to buy a special new thermostat on the wall to work well with the system?
So the question was...
Like, you got a Honeywell thermostat on your wall. Do I need to switch to the Mitsubishi special wall thermostat with its app to use your system?
So the question was about thermostat, and can the systems work with the existing thermostat, or do you need to change it out?
So that depends, right? So if you're going to use our Kumo station, right, and integrated controls where we're looking at outside temperature, right, using a backup oil or a propane to optimize efficiency, yeah, you could wire your traditional thermostat, right? I don't know why you would want to, but it's possible.
So I'd like to take just one more question, because we're almost up to time, and then certainly Brian, and Brian said that they would stay around so people can go and ask them specific questions. So one more question? Okay, with that being said, don't forget the handouts, and thank you all for coming.